Hey everyone, it's Copycat. I'm going to be going over another example of something in human fall flat. This time I'm going to be doing magnets. So magnets are a really cool physics-based way to move an object towards a certain location without having the weird quirkiness of an object just teleporting into place. So with that, I'm just going to go over what do I have in my scene. So I just have this empty game object. I've called it magnet sample. This is just to parent everything under so it looks nice and clean. Under that, I have scene, which is just my geometry. This is just needed for the test. It's not important. I have a button, which I'm going to be using to demonstrate something later. And then I just have this wall I've named magnet wall. It's just a cube that I've scaled down and colored gray. And then I have a dynamite, which is just my standard prefab. And I'm just going to be sticking this to this wall. That's my goal. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's just go through the top. So I'm going to start by adding a node graph to my magnet sample. Okay, and then under that I have scene. I'm not doing anything with this. Again, it's just the geometry, and we don't need to do anything with button either. So the next two components, I'm just going to go through and add everything we need, and I'll go over why everything's important in just a second. So I'm going to add two components called magnetic body and magnetic points. And then I'm going to add a few colliders. So I'm going to start with the box collider. And I'm just going to leave this one scaled the way it is. And then I'm going to add a second box collider. And this one I'm going to scale a bit larger in this direction. So it's out, facing outwards like this. And then I'm going to mark it is trigger. And then under dynamites, I'm going to add a magnetic body, a magnetic point, and then a rigid body so I can move it around. Then I'm going to need a mesh collider so it doesn't just fall to the ground. And because I'm using a rigid body and a mesh collider, I need to mark it as convex. Then last but not least, I need that body so it works as multiplayer. Oops, that's script. Okay. So now that we have that out of the way, we can go over what the magnetic body and points are for. So these little spheres that you see will appear once you've added the magnetic point script. This just determines the range at which, when those spheres overlap one another, they'll start pulling towards each other. So in this example, I have one object that's kind of static, which is the wall. It's not moving anywhere. So I'm just going to have that pulling on any magnetic objects that get near it. So in this example, I'm going to be setting the magnetism on the point scripts to 3000. Actually, it's set to 5000. So this is a force. So obviously we want it to be able to overcome the force of gravity, which is why it's important to set it pretty high, because if we don't, it's just going to fall to the ground because the force isn't strong enough. Now this next component, range, as you can see if I zoom in on this sphere, if I increase the range, the radius of the sphere increases as well. So if I want it to have a larger effect, I can increase that, but I think 2 looks pretty good. The next, we have offset. So if I change the offset to like 1, it'll just move the point. And I see this little angle component down here. If I slide this down, you see these little two vectors just kind of tweening in between. And basically, the lower this is, it'll only pull objects that are in this arc. So the smaller I make it, the more forcing I am to make the object be within these vectors. So I'm going to increase it all the way to 360 so that it's a kind of a global pull. Okay, so now that we have that set, we can go look at my magnetic point. And the nice thing about magnets is you only need to have one object that's pulling, and as long as one has a magnetic body and magnetic point, it'll still get pulled. So I don't have to actually touch any of this. I can leave this completely empty. So let's get into game and see what happens. I'm going to pick up my dynamite, I walk over to this wall. You can see I kind of just got pulled over there, and now my dynamite is sticking to my wall pretty easily. If I try to pull it off, I'm going to meet some resistance, because that force is pretty strong. So let's go out of play mode. Okay, so maybe 5,000 is too powerful. So let's go to say 3,000. Stick with that. The next thing I want to go over are some of these magnetic bodies components. So I can actually toggle this using a script, or using the nodes rather. So in order to do that, I first have to check toggle while signal. And now I can use the magnet wall magnetic body here, and I can turn the magnet on and off based on the signal it's getting. I'm going to hook up my button to my magnetic body. And now if I try to connect it, again, nothing happens. But the second I press this button, boom, I've turned the magnet on. So I can also toggle this, so now if I turn it off, it drops right to the ground. On, look at that, and off. That's really cool. You can do some really cool things, lots of puzzles with this. And I guess the next thing I'm going to go over is this, these booleans and also this body to fix. So these booleans all rely on this body to fix component. So in this case, we want to fix our piece of dynamite. So I'm going to drag my dynamite object. So if I disable on contact, for example, do that. Now, once I drag this dynamite into the magnetic zone, it's actually just going to turn it off. But first things first, turn it on. And I'm going to try to hold it, and nothing actually happens. So why is that? Well, the second the magnet enters the other magnet area, it permanently shuts off the magnetic body. There's no way I can turn it back on. So keep that in mind when you're using this. It can be powerful, but it's also dangerous in this sense. Okay, so we just went over disable on context. Now let's look at fix in place and disable on fix. So if I have a body to fix in here, fix in place is going to lock my dynamites onto the wall, so my body to fix onto the object after time to fix seconds. So if I want it to lock 2 seconds, I can set 2. Then let's see what this does. Turn the wall on. And I can attach it. And then after 2 seconds has passed, you can actually notice if you look at the dynamite, a fixed joint was added. So this is just going to joint it to the world, and by no means am I able to do anything about this. It is locked in place. It is not going to move no matter what. So even if I turn the magnet wall off, try jumping at it, it's not moving. The brake force and torque is infinity, but there's nothing you can really do about this. There are probably some clever ways in the node graph where you could instantiate a fixed joint and then break the fixed joint and set the brake force to be a lower number, but that would be a bit complicated and kind of beyond the scope of this tutorial. But that's what the fix does. Okay, so the last example we'll be doing is the disable on fix. So this even describes exactly what it does for you if you hover over it. Once the magnets are fixed, turn off the magnet. And this works in the same way that disable on contact does, except for it waits for this many seconds to work. So this is kind of useful in a scenario where maybe you have 2 sticks of dynamites. Maybe one of them is blue dynamites, for example. I can make that blue. And I don't want this to stick to the wall if I already have one sticking to the wall. So I only want one to be able to stick to the wall at a time. So let's see what happens if we hop into the game now. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to turn on the magnet. Grab my blue dynamite and I'm going to stick it on there. Then I grab my red dynamite and stick it on there. And watch what happens after 2 seconds. Notice how the blue dynamite just falls right off. It's because it turned off the magnet, and this object is now fixed. Alright, and that about wraps up the tutorial. So, as always, I'm going to upload this magnet sample object to GitHub, where you can find it in the description below. You're more than welcome to look at it, mess around with it, and fix anything you want, or use it in your own levels if you want. It doesn't bother me. So, yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Have fun making levels. Peace out.